there's a lot of empowerment in being able to make a decision, commit to that decision, and move forward. But many people find themselves stuck in this area, and it's working against their mental, emotional, and relationship health. It's working against their spiritual growth and development. So today I want to talk to you about the fear of commitment, the fear of making decisions, what's behind it, how it prevents you from actually making decisions, committing, and moving forward with it. And I pray this will be empowering to your journey. So welcome to the Healing and Freedom Journey. Mark DeJesus here. I am your brother from another mother, bringing you insights along the way. I'm all about mental, emotional, and relationship health. And if you are too, then you've arrived at a great place. So let's dig into this today. And I want to start off with a question. Have you ever found yourself stuck, paralyzed by a decision, whether to move forward, whether to turn in a different direction, or to remain in a decision you've already made? Do you see yourself fixated on chasing after this decision that will be just right? Is it possible that in your desire to make a good decision, you actually become paralyzed by this pressure of making a good decision? Then you may be battling a fear of commitment. And this is a core problem that I want to confront today, because there's fear involved in this. There's fear involved in this that keeps us stuck. It keeps us from being able to move into new chapters of our life, new opportunities, and most of all, new learning that's available. But many times we find ourselves in a place of procrastination, in a place of feeling stuck. Our past is haunting us. Maybe some bad decisions that we made in our history are echoing in our current day. But I want to explore this a bit and help you get more to the root system when it comes to your fear of commitment, your fear of making a decision, and how it impacts your life. Because there are beautiful stages of learning, beautiful stages of freedom ahead of you. But sometimes it just takes a little bit of work to unpack what's getting in the way and start making some application today. So let me first talk about the subject of chronic hesitation and the paralysis it brings. And I'm going to talk to you about a story back when I was in high school. I loved playing basketball. I enjoyed it. It's at the time was one of my favorite sports, if not the top favorite sport. I played it ever since I was little. But in high school, at the Christian school I went to, I was paralyzed by constant obsessive anxiety. I was always spinning about playing. And so it's amazing how something that you love can get strangled by a fear and obsession. Many of you relate to this in other areas of your life. I remember one day at basketball practice, I was stuck. The ball was passed to me. We were in a situation, and I thought about passing. Then I thought about shooting. And then I hesitated and thought, and my coach caught it, and he blew the whistle. And he was a very loud coach, would yell out instructions all the time. Some of you that went to school with me in high school, you know what I'm talking about. And he would yell out, DeJesus. And he said this statement. He said, "He who hesitates is lost." And for some reason, that statement stuck in my mind. And actually, I looked it up, and I wonder where did he get that statement from? Well, he probably heard it from someone who probably heard it from someone. But it was actually adapted from a line of a 1712 play. And in that, there was a character that where the character said, the woman that deliberates is lost. And so over time, that statement can be modified into a more modern proverb of where we say, he who hesitates. And I realized that in my life, there were many, many areas where chronic hesitation, indecisiveness, and overthinking decisions began to paralyze my life, and especially in relationships. Now, many of you know my story and my journey that's documented in the myth of the perfect one, where I would become paralyzed with anxiety and debilitating obsessive fear about taking a step forward in romantic relationship, towards engagement, towards marriage. The whole topic was just absolutely paralyzing to me. And as many of you know, I talk over and over and over again how I had to learn the power of making a decision, committing to that, moving forward. And how that taught me so much in my life and in my journey. And this trickled to many other areas of my life. And so maybe just simply connecting to a relationship, making a commitment in relationship. Another example could be, for so many people, the decision to leave a toxic or an abusive relationship. For example, a relationship with a narcissist. You know, it's the right decision to make, but to actually make the decision, commit to it, step forward. We become paralyzed. I also found myself even in professional work. And for me, that involved a lot of church and ministry work where this would come about. But for people, this can come about in where to go to school, where to go to work, job decisions, ministry or church involvement decisions, where you commit your energies and your time, whether it's paid or volunteer. I remember myself even spinning, where do I go to college? What do I do? What's God calling me to do? Well, fast forward a few years, I remember as I gained more responsibilities at church, I was involved in hiring decisions, in hiring other people on staff. Some of it would be musicians that would be hired as I moved into overseeing the worship and church productions. And then there was a stage where I moved on from being a youth pastor and moved into a different position, but it was my job to hire and bring on the next youth pastor. And I remember this sense of debilitating anxiety would come over me at the threshold of decision. I remember one time a person we were considering for a position where went through the interviews and the talk and discussion and everything and everything that you do in the process. We made a decision, and then that night, paralyzing anxiety came over me. And I wasn't equipped in knowing how to deal with it. And so I thought, well, maybe God's trying to tell me something. A common thing a lot of Christians do. When the decision-making time comes, they become paralyzed by anxiety. Fight or flight kicks in at an intense level. We attribute it to God. If we don't attribute it to God, maybe we attribute it to some form of wisdom. And so what I would do is I would validate. So for example, in that person I was hesitant with, at the last minute, we changed. I went in and said, it was kind of embarrassing to recall it all. Went back in and said, hey, I think I need to change the decision. I think we need to go in a different direction. Well, another person that we brought on worked out a little bit better. And the other person, their direction went into some questionable directions. I'll just say that. So in my mind, I was like, oh, the fear was right. It was a warning. See, sometimes when we have these fears and things turn out a certain way, our brain, our mind, our thinking, our belief system wraps around it and goes, see, fear really helped me make a good decision. We don't say it that way, but we say, oh, I had intuition, right? A sense of wisdom. The problem is that this pattern began to continue and continue and continue. And so what I found myself experiencing, and many people relate to this, is an increasingly narrowing fear and pressure. It's like the fear would become more micro, more micro, more micro. And the more we feed decision and commitment hesitancy, fear can continue to grow over things. So simple decisions can become more and more paralyzing. My wife talks about this where she said even simple everyday decisions, shopping decisions, and I relate to this myself. I'd go and buy something and then I'd be like, you know what, maybe I shouldn't have bought that. And I went and go and take it back. Her and I have a lot of different stories that we share. I remember even the simple commitment of buying a gym membership where I was an adult now and I wanted to work out more and get in better shape. And I remember a friend of mine going to get a gym membership. And right as it was time to sign the papers, this anxiety and hesitancy rose up and all kinds of doubts. And I began to feed them. It's kind of a funny story because I said to the guy, I wasn't in the place where I was still living with my parents. I haven't really left father and mother yet. And I said, as kind of a bailout, you know what? I need to go talk to my parents about this. And he jokingly replied, do you really need to talk to them? It's not like you're bringing home a stripper. Now, he didn't know who he was talking to. And I'm like, but his very nonchalant reply, joking reply, brought out the fact that I was making something super serious as something that wasn't super serious. I even got this into buying a cell phone contract. I remember in the late 90s, and I actually looked up the phone that I bought because I wanted to track it down. And I tracked it down to about 1996, 97 when I went to buy my first cell phone. And as I'm working at church and the need to be more available, get a hold of people, so forth, and not always being in my office, the technology is very, very helpful. And I remember being paralyzed with a 2-year subscription or a 2-year commitment contract that I was going to be signing. And I think at the time it was like $35 a month. Now, I wasn't making very much money at all. So it's understandable I'd be a little nervous. Okay, I got to watch out for my funds. But it's amazing how the fear of commitment paralyzed me. This moved into more things. I became so terrified and frightened when I first rented my apartment. And I remember going to counseling, and the counselor told me the same thing I tell many other young people today. We got to find a way to leave father and mother. Even if you're not married yet, you got to find a way to step out. And I couldn't afford it, but I found a way at the time. I got a roommate and found a way to make it happen. And I remember just signing that form. I felt like I was signing my life away. Fast forward to many years later, buying my first condo and signing the mortgage papers and doing all that. There was a sense of loneliness, a sense of pressure, a sense of fear, a sense of if I mess this all up, what am I going to do? And I saw that in a lot of areas. Making a committed decision was a paralyzing subject for me. And so I had to realize that in order for me to be able to move forward in a healthy way, I'm going to have to face this fear of commitment, this fear of decision. This wasn't just in the area of ROCD. It infected a lot of areas of my life. And what we need to realize is the fear of commitment can appear to you as protective, as though it's creating a protective mechanism around you. But really, it's actually destructive and keeps us stuck and held back from taking steps forward in life. So let's look at this. So why do we fear this? Why do we have such a fear of commitment? What I want to do is I want to go down 6 layers and briefly show you what's connected to our fear of commitment, our fear of making a decision, and walk you through what is in effect. So we'll start at the surface, we'll move down to the root system. The first place is the lack of equipping. Most people are not equipped to make empowered decisions, make committed decisions. In my pastoral work, in small church and large church settings, I notice there's a lot of non-committal, commitment hesitancy, fear of making decisions, fear of making the wrong decisions. There's a lack of equipping in relating to our decision making. The reality is, from a young age, you were designed to be equipped on making decisions, making good, healthy decisions, but also being equipped to know that you are empowered to make decisions, and you can learn as you make those decisions and commit. You learn in the doing. We get stuck in trying to make the just right, perfect decision before we do anything. So parents, as they raise us, they are designed to help us make good decisions based on good values. So there's that aspect, right? But then there's the power of make a decision, commit, step forward, and keep learning. Parents can also help us to recognize, you know what, you made a decision, stick with it. You committed to it. Stick with it. Many people talk about being a kid, making a decision to something, and they tried out for the football team and they made it, but it got hard, so they quit. And they look back and they go, I wish I didn't quit. Or they started playing an instrument and they go, I wish I didn't quit that instrument. I wish I didn't bail out. Parents are those that help us realize the value of sticking with our decisions. There's also a very, very important thing in our equipping, that making mistakes are not the end. We have so much shame that surrounds our mistakes. We see mistakes as failures, and failures is the end. Failures are the end. That's it. But no. Mistakes are actually valuable because within the world of mistakes, we learn, but we don't want to ever feel that. Now, the more a child gets older, the more you're not only taught to make good decisions, the child should be given more and more and more incremental freedom, because eventually the parent's going to have to let you go. But letting a child go doesn't start at 18 or 19 or whatever. It actually starts at a very young age when you're giving more responsibilities to a child in a good way, recognizing that they have freedom to make a decision. And in that, if they make a mistake, they can learn. Everything's about learning. And then they're empowered, so they have a good relationship with decision making. Now, there's some parental traps that we come from. Some of you had controlling parents. They controlled every decision. They hovered over every decision. They basically made them for you or highly influenced every decision. So there wasn't a sense of you being able to connect with your values and where you're at and being able to make your own decisions over time. Now, obviously, a little child needs help, needs equipping. A teenager needs equipping, but walking alongside and giving room to make those decisions. So many had controlling parents over every decision. Then there are those who were neglected in making decisions. So they were always on their own. Many Gen Xers talk about this because we were considered latchkey kids, meaning after school, you came home and no one was there. And you'd have to kind of make your own dinner and you'd sit and watch TV and that was your companion. And you kind of had to we had to do a lot of figuring out everything. And so out of places of neglect, we felt like the weight and pressure of everything was on us. And unhealthy, and it could even lead to a perfectionistic pressure, can weigh upon you. So in this world of pressure, when you don't have equipping, now this mechanism of perfectionism comes in, which is this just right but never enough kind of pressure, where decisions, commitment feel like this ominous, heavy weight where all of life is staked on this, and you better not mess it up. And this just right is a feeling that we chase. We want it to feel just right. And if it doesn't feel right, then we hesitate. So then this fuels a lifestyle of procrastination. So as a part of safety, the pressure's too big. Instead of making the wrong decision, I'll make no decision. Why? Because there's a deep sense of a fear of making the wrong decision. This is driven by perfectionism. Fear comes alongside, and it projects a dreadful outcome. If you make the wrong decision, boy, your life is going to be ruined. So we fear being in a terrible place in life. We fear being in pain. Honestly, we fear being in discomfort. We fear being uncomfortable. We fear being miserable, and fear keeps projecting this. Oh, you're going to be miserable. You're going to be this. You're going to be that. God's going to do this, or this is going to happen to you. Or just simply the fear of remaining trapped in some permanent death sentence. It catastrophizes us. So we fear that we're making a decision. We're going to miss a signal that God is sending, because we treat a lot of our decision making as though God kind of needs to make it for us. And we believe this is something that is a myth. We believe that just right decisions will prevent an uncomfortable future. And we don't realize you can make great decisions and still have hardship, still have struggle, still even have suffering, or things that don't turn out the way that you expected them. In the midst of this, we also have this echo in our mind about the past, don't we? Bad decisions in the past, or decisions we made and didn't work out the way we thought. And that just adds to the paralysis. So the result is, in the journey of trying to make the perfect decision, we often don't make a decision at all. And we hesitate. Or we just spin and spin and spin about it in our heads, never actually taking a step. And so therefore, we fuel procrastination, double-mindedness, and now we feel over time more and more unstable. So let's get a little bit deeper into the layer system, shall we? Because what we're really doing in this world is we're responding to fear by seeking for the just right feeling. I'm a big teacher on highlighting feelings and emotions. Why? Because no one lives life without emotion. No one lives life without feeling. Now, Christians can often dismiss emotions. Don't do things by your emotions. Don't do things by your feelings. Yes, but that's not always giving context, because emotions are connected to our thinking. It's how we relate. It's how we feel. It even is involved in our decision making. We just don't always like to admit it. We often say, you know what, this just felt right. The problem with those who struggle in this area is that they desperately need to have that just right feeling. We need to feel good, then take a step. If you look at all your struggling decisions, all of them, 100% of all struggles with decisions have an influence. It doesn't mean it's the main influence. It has a big influence of I want to feel that feeling and then take a step, which leads to the modern version of this in Christianity with our obsession with confirmation. We desperately need confirmation. We will look at anything. We'll look at a sign on the wall. We'll look at a street name. We'll look at a bird flying and landing in front of us. We'll look at an apple falling from a tree. We'll look at a certain color car passing us by. We'll see a number. We'll see a saying. We'll hear somebody say a phrase. We'll look at anything as some kind of cognitive bias of affirmation, confirmation. Oh, I'm making the right decision. We can get so superstitious around these things. We can also become very, very much chasers of assurance. So we shop around our decision to people, right? To our friends, to our counselors, to our pastors, to parents, to relatives. We're looking for a magical solution to somebody just give us that thing that makes us feel better so that then we can step forward. Now, let me be honest with you. If you have that feeling, if you get that feeling, it's great, right? I'm not saying all of life is make a decision and dread and everything's just miserable. It's great, but that's not the foundation. Getting that feeling is not the footing of making powerful decisions and walking in commitment. Because there's many decisions you'll make that are uncomfortable. You don't have that just right feeling. But you make the decision knowing that you'll learn in the doing and knowing that procrastination is killing the life of your heart. And so when people talk about their meaningful decisions, when they talk about, I had to make this tough decision, and when they describe it, they're going to tell you, I had anxiousness, I had uncertainty, I had doubt, I had hesitancy. After I made the decision, I had a fear, maybe I made the wrong decision. But they made a decision, steps were taken, and they moved forward. And if we become people that learn this, then we can start learning in everything that works out and doesn't work out. It's all for our learning. It's all for our growth. It's all for our development. But there's this deep-rooted fear that screams, and it's the fear of failure. It says if a decision doesn't work out in the way we expected, then that means we're a failure. So this fuels more procrastination. I want you to know that the fear of commitment is not driven by wisdom. It's not driven by healthy concern. It's not driven by taking time to count the costs. It is driven by a fear of failure. James tells us this, that when we ask for wisdom, that God gives it liberally, freely. Here you go. Here's wisdom. But the writer of James warns us about how doubt will come in. Because what doubt does is it creates hesitancy. It creates now more than one mind, not a single mind. Because God is saying wisdom's there, just step in faith and take the next step. Because in the learning, you're going to gain wisdom. Wisdom is not gained in a classroom. Wisdom is not gained in just reading a book. Wisdom is gained by humble learning in life. Having a respect and awe for the learning available to us at each stage in life, we gain more wisdom. And James says if that doubt takes over, we're going to become double-minded. Now you have a collision of two minds, and they're competing. And what is happening is there's no step forward, and there's instability taking place. And for many of us, we're recognizing double-mindedness is a mental health killer, that it actually erodes our sense of confidence and sense of sanity and single-mindedness. Wisdom is not found in making perfect decisions. It's found when we allow ourselves to learn in every stage of our life. But with shame, you're never going to learn. Do you notice that? We never learn. We're just avoiding all the stuff from our past. We're avoiding any mishap in our present and our future because shame teaches us that mistakes are failure and failure is the end. So therefore, shame won't let you learn from anything. You've been hurt in the past in a relationship, and now you have a new relationship opportunity. It's like the shame is, you don't want that thing to happen. Remember, you gave your heart to that person, and remember what happened? Instead of recognizing, hey, you gave your heart to that person, you committed to it, you gave your best. What are you learning from that as you step forward in your new journey, in your new chapter? So there's a heavy shame around this fear of failure that gives it potency. Now, what fear is attached to, and then we're going to get to the core wound here. This is where most of our wounds go to. But the fear of failure connects to rejection and abandonment. Fear of failure triggers these wound areas. Our wounds of neglect, emptiness, trauma, relational pain, lack of being rooted in love, lack of being rooted in safety. Follow the fear of failure. Follow that down, and you'll find a projected image that the person wants to avoid at all costs. And that place is, if I'm a failure, I will be rejected, abandoned, disconnected. Disconnected from God, disconnected from people, disconnected from any sense of belonging. We will be alone. Sometimes it goes pretty deep. We'll die alone. God will completely banish us. We'll end up without anyone. We won't connect. We won't belong. These wounds are deep. It's why I talk about the rejection mindset a lot, which you can get a copy of that book and get my materials on that. It's so important because it drives so much of what we do, because rejection hits at the place of feeling loved, knowing who we are, and a sense of belonging, a sense of validation, affirmation, our sense of connection. It attacks that. So no wonder when we make a decision, all 6 of these are firing off, right? And that abandoned wound has a lot of energy in it to keep you paralyzed. So we move away from discomfort as quickly as possible, so we avoid the decision. We avoid making a decision. We avoid anything that involves commitment. And so we remain stuck, but there's a myth that we believe. Well, at least I'm safe here. But it's a distorted view of safety. It's not safety with freedom. It's a false sense of safety that's actually imprisoning. So I want us to be aware of how we mask our fear of commitment, because there's often Christian things that we do that keep us bound in these continual cycles and don't let us experience freedom. One is a spiritual camouflage. We go, well, I'm being cautious. I'm trying to be wise. We attribute our anxiety to God is giving me a pause. God hasn't given me a green light. That's a common one. God hasn't given me a green light. We're waiting for heaven to go, here's green light. The problem with that mindset is it doesn't involve faith. If God goes, do this, and this is the right decision, where's the faith now? I go, well, it's gonna work out. We don't realize that we're asking God to eliminate the faith walk. We're eliminate the risk, eliminate the reality that we're going to take a step and life has its challenges. So we attribute anxiety as God is telling me something. We spiritualize our procrastination. I'm waiting on the Lord. Years ago, when I used to do conferences, I used to mess with and tease the audience a bit, because I was like, for many of you, your song of your life is "They That Wait Upon the Lord," based on the Isaiah scripture. And I would go and I would just kind of have fun with them, and I would just sing, they that wait upon the Lord. And I would try to hold the notes out like as slow and as long as I could. Shall renew their strength. It's just kind of just and just have a laugh with it, and people would laugh, and some of them would recognize, yeah, I've been using this. I'm waiting on the Lord. They shall mount up, and with wings as eagles, they shall run and not grow weary. I'm changing keys all the time, so I forgot. I need an organist behind me. And teach me, Lord. Teach me, Lord. There we go. To wait. But I would just drag it out. And like you're waiting on the Lord is you're putting something on God when really you need to take a step. And so much of life is us just needing to take a step. God, I'm waiting on you, waiting on you, waiting on you. It's just fueling inactivity, passivity, procrastination. And so we also believe that I need God to help me make this decision because this is what we believe. We believe that if God is in it, then everything will work out perfectly. That's another myth. Now, there's decisions you'll make. You may start a business, and it's a great decision, and God's in it. But that path didn't work out. And it may lead to something else that then leads to something else. You may make a commitment in a relationship, and something happens, right? It doesn't mean that God wasn't with you or God wasn't in it. There's lots of things in life that God, I look back and I go, thank you, God, for that experience. That didn't work out. But I learned a lot from it. I learned a whole lot from it. So I'll get more into some of those decisions in just a moment. But the spiritual camouflage we put, or the myth of peace before the decision. You should feel a certain peace. Christians today are peace chasers. But what we're looking for is that good feeling. And if that feeling's not there, we don't make a decision. When in reality, many of your powerful decisions, life-changing decisions, where you're going to look back and they're going to be rememberable. You know, if that's a word. They're going to be decisions you remember. Defining moments. That was the word I was looking for. Like defining moments that you look back and go, wow, that was a key decision that I made. Many of them are going to have anxiety along the way, at the threshold especially, and after. You make the decision, you walk through the door, and as you walk through the door, you thought, oh, you just feel great, and everything would feel great, and then you have that post-decision thing that comes, oh no, what did I do, right? And we panic, we feel like we have to go back. We do a lot of superstition interpretation of our anxiety. First of all, we don't realize that anxiousness and decision-making, there's a normalness to it. We put this heavy weight on God, make the decision for me. And then when we have like for example, post-purchase regret, I think every time I've made a major purchase, I say that, I mean like a vehicle, car, house, the next morning, like, oh, and I learned over time, oh, there it is. It's just that thing. This is what happens in the journey. We've not been equipped to understand. With decisions comes uncertainty, anxiousness, doubts, feelings of a loss of control. But we don't let them run our lives. Now, some people may say, well, I don't want to be impulsive, Mark. I don't want to be impulsive. We fear that. We fear that ditch. But in the response to it, we fall into another ditch called compulsivity. When we talk about being impulsive, it speaks of a chronic doing something without thinking. It can feed erratic behaviors. Just in an emotional burst, you just make a decision without giving it any thought. Well, for many who follow this channel, you're actually stuck by compulsive decisions. That compulsivity is ways of feeling better, but they're avoidance patterns. They're safety behaviors that you engage in. Things that you do to just not make a decision and not move forward in the sense of this is how I'll feel okay. How many of you fall into that? So you're checking, double checking, checking, never making a decision, but checking. I have people for years and years check back in with me about a decision they've never made. And they're still looking for reassurance, looking for reinsurance. And they're now being more and more tormented by fear and more insecure and more, because that's what this constant procrastinating does. And so then we get into this like overanalysis. We're just overthinking. And we live in the age of overthinking. Way too much cultural overthinking our decisions, overanalyzing. When it comes to who we're marrying, we're overanalyzing it. When it comes to making a purchase, overanalyzing it. Who to take a step with in just a simple friendship or joining a church, or we overthink, overthink. So we go to God with this, and we're trying to get direction from God. And we can actually get frustrated with God's approach. Because the Bible talks about the perfect law of liberty. James brings this up, and I don't think we talk enough about liberty, because liberty is the freedom and ability for you to make a choice and a decision, to live and move and have your being. God gives you the ability to choose, and this frustrates people in this area because they want an external source to make the decision so that then they go into it. And God says, no, I've actually empowered you to make a decision, because in it is where you learn. In it is where faith gets activated, and God loves faith. And there is no faith without a sense of risk. There is no faith without taking a step. But for many of us, we're stuck in spiritual slavery. And Paul told us that we're no longer slaves anymore. We're sons. We're not people that just serve the household. We're a part of the household now. We are members of the household. We don't just serve tables. We get to sit at the table. And so when you're stuck in spiritual slavery, you need someone to tell you what to do, to give you orders and instructions down to microscopic details. We're waiting for God to come down from heaven, tell us exactly what to do, where to go, so we become vulnerable. When you have this mindset, you're always checking the wind, checking. You become very vulnerable to fear and indecisiveness and hesitancy, because we're trying to find this. Now, I understand the good value. We want to do what's right. We want to honor God. And yes, God's given us his word. He's given us instruction, but you actually have within that, you have great freedom to choose. It started in the beginning when Adam was given instruction to name the animals. God didn't tell him what to name them. He gave him freedom to do it. God's given us instructions around marriage, but you make the decision who you marry. You get counsel, you get good feedback, you get some good training. But then for many, it's over counsel, it's over talking, over analyzing. You have freedom to make a choice of starting a business or getting a job. And God talks about the value of job and the importance and the integrity of how we are to conduct ourselves. But you make a decision for the job. We want God to tell us the job. Tell us this one. Is it this one or this one? Because in our minds, it's driven by fear of failure. It's driven by, I don't want to be uncomfortable. God, if you tell me, then this thing is going to work out perfectly. So we stay stuck in this slavery when God has called us to be sons and daughters. And sons and daughters have a freedom within them to make decisions and to learn. I'll even go further, because Jesus reflected this in his approach to decision making. His was a call to action. He would just meet these disciples and go, drop your nets, follow me. In other words, he's showing you, pick a decision, follow, because in the decision, in the commitment is where you're going to learn. Jesus laid out a beautiful example that he called them to decision, because then in the 3-year journey with Christ is where they were going to learn. They were not going to learn in sitting there making a decision, pros and cons list, where's this going to go? How's this going to affect me? What's going to happen? They made a decision, and then in that life with Christ is where they learned everything. You see, we're taught culturally, got to learn, then do. And I think we need to do a lot more, even in our simple day-to-day training, where our learning, there's application right away. Let's get to this. More schools should have this, more even in university. Let's get to the actual application of this. Let's get you involved in this. So that's how life works. And Jesus modeled that learning is in the commitment, because the truth is we don't learn everything and then apply it. And this also applies even to marriage. If we think about marriage, what is the beauty of marriage is you make a covenant decision, and then you step in, and then you really learn. I used to tell people for years who'd want to come to me for premarital counseling. And as a pastor, I would do it. Okay, I'll walk with you through it. But here's what I'd often say to them. Can we commit to postmarital counseling? Because right now we're talking theoretically about something you're not in yet. You're making a decision to it, but you're not really in it yet. You know, you have your series of great feelings. Oh, we never fight. We love each other. Some like that. Not everybody. Then there's others. We have your anxiousness and this and that and things you're spinning about. You have all your expectations of what it's supposed to be. And I go, let's get you in the place of covenant, because then the work is now meaningful. Because in your dating years and engagement, if I talk to you about marriage and this and that, you're going to hear some of it, but most of it's going to go right over your head. When you're in it, now it becomes real. I remember when I was a kid and my dad would do simple repairs around the house. And I just really didn't care about it. I think he kind of hoped maybe I'd catch the bug and want to get involved. And I just didn't. I just didn't care about it. Well, when I got my first place and I had to start taking care of things and changing things, I became more interested. And then when I bought our home down here in North Carolina, it all became super real. Where now it's something I love doing. I've had plenty of experience now and enjoy these things, right? But the learning became real. Learning isn't real unless you're in it. So many of you are trying to make a decision for something. You're not in it. So there's not really much learning. So you're trying to learn, but you got to step forward because that's where the beauty is. Let me go over to another example of Peter walking on water. He stepped out of the boat and walked on water. When he saw Jesus, I'm willing to take that step. He walked on water. It was amazing, but he had to get out of the boat. The metaphor is incredibly powerful. Now, those who are watching or those of us reading and watching, we could be a critical observer. We can see, oh, Peter began to sink, and we in a very harsh judgment, oh, you kept your eyes off Jesus. That's what you need to do. Keep your eyes on Jesus. Wait a second. You didn't step out. And we live in a world today where everyone does this, right? We watch somebody else taking a step and we criticize and well, where are you stepping out? How about you take a step? How about you put some things on the line and take a step and commit to something before you start criticizing everyone else? Well, the truth is we're afraid of criticism, and then we do so much criticism of others, it helps us to not deal with our own decision making. He was the one that stepped out. Yeah, he sunk down, but that's where he learned. And so we see others sink in their decisions and we go, I'm not going to do. It validates our fears. And beware of where you keep feeding and validating your fears. There's other single-minded exhortations. We remember Elijah, who said, how long will you falter between two opinions? Or Joshua putting the stake in the ground, saying, choose you this day. Or James reminding us, a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. And that's a very important mental health principle. Because life involves us making continual decisions of taking steps, committing to those steps, while continuing to take more steps. All these steps combine to making up your journey. A lot of the word steps here, right? Let me say this again. Life involves making continual decisions of taking steps. So it's not just, get through that feeling, just taking steps, committing to that step while continuing to take more steps. And all these combine to make your journey, and you're on a journey and it's all for learning. So let me warn you about the dangers of constant delay, hesitancy, and non-committal living. Double-mindedness is going to increase, and this increases instability. Fear is going to grow. The more that we delay our decision, the more fear grows, and it becomes like the Wizard of Oz. We think it's this very frightening thing when really it's just this old guy behind a curtain, this little old man who's actually nothing to be afraid of. It's all smoke and mirrors. It's all an illusion. But it becomes this big monster, but the monster is fake. But we have so much fear that just keeps growing and growing. Meanwhile, our confidence lowers. Sorry, I changed slides here. Our confidence lowers. And because what happens, we're in this stagnant place, our faith grows in practice. Your faith doesn't grow in just your head getting more knowledge. It grows in practice. Avoidance, non-taking steps, it keeps us in a state of atrophy. Now the muscles don't get developed. You have faith muscles. They're there. They just need to be developed. And you develop them by taking small steps every single day. Otherwise, we become stagnant and the stagnancy increases. So then just the yuck of where we are, the yuck of what we're dealing with, we get angry. We get angry at ourselves. Our self-hatred increases, our shame, because we were made to take steps. And I want you to be reminded that we learn through making decisions and stepping forward. In 2015, I made what would be considered to be a big decision, a difficult decision. As I was pastoring a small church, and I was spending a lot of time helping a number of people that didn't go to my church. It was a very interesting thing. And the church wasn't growing and developing. I'm not talking about just numbers. It was very difficult to get leadership going and get everyone kind of just wanted me to show up and run everything and do everything. And I wasn't interested in that. If I was going to have a church, I wanted everyone to be involved in this. I wanted a whole community participation. And they just wanted, Mark, come and do your teaching thing. We love hearing you. And I realized there was a sense of me feeling a nudge towards moving away from that into more towards what I'm doing now to this day. Long story short, we left that. We actually closed down the church. Here's some things that I observed in the process. I was overdoing the fear of this decision. Now, I could have told you at the time, finances were not great. I was deep struggle with provision during that time. Resources were low. But I had hyped up the fear so much, it actually kept me from moving forward. You know what it also did? I realized that in that hesitancy, because there's a time about 9 months I delayed the decision. I probably could have made the decision 9 months earlier. I found myself putting up with toxic and abusive behavior from people more and more. And that's what happens when we don't make a renewed decision. We just put up with everything that's around us. You know what's another thing I learned? When I made the decision and I shared it with other pastor friends, so many of them said this, I wish I could do the same thing. And I was blown away. Wait, what? Yeah, I wish I could do that. I'm just waiting on the Lord to give me confirmation. Oh. Some of it I can understand. Hey, I have to pay for college for my kids. Okay, I get it. But many were waiting for a certain feeling for them. Had I not made that decision, it would not move me into the next phase of 3 years of work that I did, meeting with people in my office, doing church consulting, that I learned so much within that 3-year time and 3-year window. I could even go look back further, over 20 years ago. Just about 20 years ago, where I'd worked at a church that I had been at for most of my life. And I'd been on staff for about 12 years and made a tough decision because I felt a stirring in my heart that I wanted to help people with heart healing and help them mentally, emotionally, relationally. That I wanted to, I saw that the church was broken and goofy, and we're not dealing with the lack of health that's going on. We're chasing a bunch of things, and a stirring came up within me. Now, I didn't have a list of confirmations. I didn't have any guaranteed provision. My wife and I made a very difficult decision, but one that didn't take long for us to make. We got married and we started all over. I left the staff position, started all over with my connections, with networks, and took on a whole new journey. And so what was happening through all this? Fears, anxiousness, doubt. Would double-mindedness want to come in? Yeah, but did I do this? Sure. When we made a decision to leave Connecticut and move down to North Carolina, we didn't have everything laid out for us. In fact, we made multiple trips, and some of those trips were telling us it's not going to work. It's not going to happen. The market was rising, was getting out of our price range to even afford anything, and just continually said, no, it's not going to happen. But we kept ourselves learning, and in the process looking at what can we do? What's the next step that's available? Always looking to what can we do, not just focus on what isn't working or what's not happening or replaying all the stuff from the past, which I certainly have had my share of struggling with it. But in these places of decision, we knew we needed to leave Connecticut. Nothing personal to the people in Connecticut, but the systems I was connected to, the networks I was in, it was all just kind of caving in on me, pulling at me, and I needed to move into what I do today. I wanted to write books, create teachings, and do some effective investment into people, and I found myself being scattered everywhere, pulled everywhere, and actually the reality is I needed some time to recover and heal, and I wasn't making room for that. So I look back and I go, man, I spun too much. I spun out a lot with God. God, why aren't you doing something? I had a lot of self-pity, self-loathing patterns I had to deal with. But I found that when I just made the decision and stepped into it. That's where the learning got real. And that's where I looked and realized so many are paralyzed by this, because I could still be at that church in Connecticut that I worked on staff, but probably incredibly stagnant, incredibly angry, and just never stepping into what would be the more that was available to me. We want the more to show up instead of stepping out and in the journey discovering that more. So I want to tell you that your journey is not about perfect faith, folks. It's about growing faith. God's expectation is not that you just make the perfect decision every time. It's faith that pleases God, right? But it's not perfect faith of knowing everything, having it all right, because every person in the hall of faith in Hebrews had major issues, didn't they? He's just asking that faith that grows through practice and learning in it, because that's what's going to take place. My faith only grows when I take a step and take another step. Now, within this, I told you a few stories about, just quick stories about decisions that were big decisions for me, for my wife. One of the things I had to do is I had to realign and recalibrate my expectation. I got that on the slide there, expectation recalibration. Because I often found if I make a big step of faith, that everything right there is going to open up. The mindset of if I leave first base, second base is going to be right there. And I didn't realize that sometimes you make a decision and you may hit a wilderness for a season. Like when I left the church in Connecticut, I went through a wilderness season, the first one, because I had a first church that I worked on staff. The second one I described that I closed in 2015 was a smaller church that I pastored. The first one was when I was on staff. When I left that large church, I had a mindset of, big step of faith, God's just going to meet us. And then I went into this long wilderness process for a number of years. And what I didn't realize was that I actually needed that to heal. I actually needed that to do some more maturing. I actually needed that to get to know who I really am. I thought I knew who I was, but I was just a pastor, teacher guy, because you have to understand, I did that since I was a teenager. I was preaching since 15 years old. I was on staff at a church at 18 years of age. I was leading a youth group that was larger than some churches in our area. And now I'm in this season of crashing. And it was actually something that I needed. Did I make the wrong decision? Not at all. I just didn't have a healthy expectation. And for many of us, when we take a step, we think if I make the right decision, it's just going to work out. It's just all going to be there. That's not what it's about. It's about the learning and seeing God do a great work, because my reliance on him increases when I step into those arenas. When I'm just sitting in the boat, I don't really need God. Do you understand what I'm saying? You understand what I'm saying? Like when we're just in these safety places, do you really need God? It's when you step out into these unknowns, you go, man, I really need you. And you start actively relying at a greater level. So it's not about perfect decisions. You're going to make mistakes. You're not going to do everything right. But I want to encourage you, in all things, learn. Now, here's something I did that helped me with my exposure, the exposure practice to the fear. Here's what I said. If this decision is the wrong decision, whatever that means, and I step into it and down the road I see that, the good news is I can make another decision at that point. And that's the beauty of this. But not deciding is hurting me. So where's the next step for you? The first question I would ask you is, it's a question I've been asking people for over 20 years. What would you do if fear was not in the equation? It's a question I ask over and over again. And sometimes I've used it to just cut to the core, cut to the root of it. A commitment to, you got to move on from an abusive church. You got to move on from an abusive relationship. You got to step forward. You got to sign a contract, take a job, live somewhere, move forward in your relationship, get married. We got a lot of singles dating, and they're in perpetual relationship for years. Make a decision. What is fear holding you back from? And don't be overwhelmed with the next 20 decisions. It's just the next thing. It's not even the big thing. It's just the next thing. Push through the shame, push through the fear, because you're actually going to learn a lot. And the thing I want to encourage you is in the exposure. We have to face the fear and face the abandonment issue because they're connected together. And you're only going to face it in the doing. And stepping out of the fear of people rejecting me, fear of people not liking me, fear of me being alone. Okay, I'll face it. I'll face it. And what's interesting, some of those things you fear, when you actually face the experience, you go, oh, hey, you know what? It's not so bad. You might go, oh, I fear people criticizing you. Then someone criticizes you and you go, oh, that stung, but hey, it wasn't as bad as I thought. And now you start developing resilience. So again, my takeaway here today is it's not about perfect faith, but growing faith. And you don't learn by getting all the information and confirmation down and getting all your feelings right. You take a step and you keep taking a step and you keep learning. So today, as your brother from another mother, let me encourage you, face that fear, face those core wounds and start making decisions, take a step and let your heart be committed to learning in all things in the journey. And the good news is God's grace will be there with you because he's all about walking the journey with you. Where does this help you in your life and in your journey? Do me a favor. If it helped, click the like button, click subscribe, go over to markdejesus.com where you can click on the donate button. And that's a way that you can support these videos. I spend a lot of time, a lot of energy, and a lot of thoughtful compilation of all these materials that I put together. And I want them to be a blessing. That's a way that you can support. You can also make a decision if you want to, a further investment. Join me in the Healing and Freedom community. This is a place where it's a monthly subscription. You can cancel at any time, but you have access to courses, weekly Q&As that I host, and also forum interaction. And right now, I am teaching on, speaking of fear of commitment, The Myth of the Perfect One, which is a book and now a course that's being developed that is all about relationship OCD, working and navigating through that battleground. You can find it at markdejesus.com/community. Well, Lodwell and the Creek Don't Rise. I'll be back with more insights for your healing and freedom journey. But in the meantime, I'm out.